You know, I think one of the topics with the most misinformation out there and the most misunderstood has got to be the idea of compressing the golf ball. So right after this, let's delve into a little bit about compression, see if we can find some truths and some untruths, and hopefully it'll be a little bit enlightening. And it's all right after this. Stay tuned. Hey, this is Steve with HitItLonger.com. I'm on a journey to hit it longer and straighter down the fairway, longer and straighter all the way to the green, and this includes that approach shot with the iron after the good drive to set yourself up a birdie putt. Hey, if you're on the same journey as me, hey, I hope you'll join me. Hit the subscribe button, like this video if you liked it at the end, and leave a comment down below. Let me know how I did. And don't forget to visit my site, HitItLonger.com, where you're going to get over 100 free articles and videos that are all going to, I think, help you with your golf swing and lower your scores. All right, so let's get a little bit into what this thing they call compression or compressing the ball. I mean, what is it exactly, but how do we get more of it? We know it's good, right? Because everybody's telling us that we want to compress the ball, but it doesn't tell us, you know, what it is and how we're going to get more of it. So first, let's cover some of the kind of the misunderstandings about compression. If I wanted to compress the ball the most, let's talk about the things that make the ball get compressed. And that is, number one, the loft of the club that you're using. So that means that the lower the club from a wedge down to a driver, you're going to squish the ball or compress the ball more at impact. The other biggest factor that's going to compress the ball is speed. So the faster you swing, the more you're going to compress the ball. A third factor, huge factor in ball compression, is how close to the center of the club face or the sweet spots you're hitting. So therefore, if I were to follow these three ideas all the way to their extreme, I would squish the ball. I would get the most ball compression if I swung a 0-degree driver at 150 miles an hour and I hit it dead square in the sweet spot. Then you would see the most squish of the golf ball that could possibly be had. Now, you get into the compression of the golf ball itself. So a ball that's rated at a much higher rate of compression, let's say 115, which would be like the hardest ball or the highest compression ball on the market, it would take a lot more speed to squish that ball appreciably. In fact, you would never squish it as much as you might squish, well, I don't know, like a 70 or 60 or 80 compression golf ball. You would just simply squish them more. So these are some misunderstood things about compression that people really need to understand. And hey, one more myth before we start taking a look at the right way to compress the ball is one myth that a lot of people think, it's really mind-boggling. Even a lot of instructors out there, they're teaching you not how to compress the ball, but how to compress the ground. So they would tell you, hey, the more that you can pound down into the ground like that, the more compression you're going to get. Well, that's not necessarily true, as we'll see in a second. Yeah, I might be attempting to compress the ground and bend the golf club if I did it really hard. But that's not exactly how I would do it, and I'd like to show you a better way, a better thought process in how to get the most compression and the most square, solid feeling hits out of your game. Okay, so I think face-on angle is probably the best angle to kind of explain what we're after when it comes to compressing the ball maximally. I think we need to kind of define how the best way we're going to be creating maximum compression, and that is we would like the club, a couple things here. We would like the club to arrive with a negative angle attack or a slight downstrike. Not disproportionately. Again, we're not trying to compress the ground. I've got a 5-iron here. A 5-iron only has a small angle of attack. For me, I like about 2 or 2.5 degrees. It's almost sweeping, but not quite. So what we're after when we're going for compression is we have a slight downstrike. That's one. You have the low point of your golf swing, in this case on a 5-iron, is about 2 inches ahead of the ball with my low point. And then you have the club shaft leaning forward a few inches at the moment of impact as well. So I think those are the 3 things necessary that's going to allow you to get the most compression. Now, that's the definition. Now let's talk about how we're going to get there. So I think most of you out there who are interested in this topic, you probably have an issue. You're told you don't compress the golf ball. Maybe you just don't feel like you're compressing the golf ball correctly. It's probably because you're not meeting any of those 3 criteria of the definition that I just gave you. You are probably what would be called casting, or maybe running out of wrist angle a little too early. You're losing the forward lean on the club shaft, bottoming out a little too soon. Maybe you're just bottoming out underneath the golf ball. Maybe you're a decent player, but you don't have any angle of attack. Well, of course, if I come in at the same angle of attack, about 2 degrees downwards, but I don't have any forward lean at the moment because I'm running out of angle too soon, so I'm going to present more loft at impact. Let's take it to the extreme and put the handle behind like this. So now this is like the loft of a 7 or an 8-iron, and so the ball is going to go straight up and straight down, and it's just simply because of the loft presented at impact, it's not going to have the compression. Remember, spin loft, or we could just call it loft if we're being simple, the less spin loft, the more compression. So if you're adding loft to the club and coming in and trying to hit it with a reasonable angle of attack, you're just not going to compress it as much. And so in those cases, a lot of the time, you're going to catch the ball fat, and you're going to either catch it fat, which of course you're not going to compress it because compressing more of the ground than the ball. And if you bottom out behind it, but you miss the ground, you're going to catch the ball on the way up and hit it thin. And again, you're going to lose all your compression because of rule number 3, you haven't hit the ball in the sweet spot. So what this boils down to is that we're going to need to control what we would call our low point. Our low point is where the club, it descends, descends, descends. So think of it as a pendulum, descending, descending, low point. The low point, generally speaking, there's a few variables that might make an adjustment to this law, but essentially your low point is going to be right where the leading edge of the club is directly hanging vertically from the club shaft like this. Of course, we don't want that to be straight up and down at impact. We want to see a little bit of forward lean, and you can see how as we forward lean it, it's going to take some loft away. Given that we don't, come in with a normal angle of attack, you're going to compress the ball more because it's de-lofted slightly. Okay, so getting back to controlling the low point, the swing I teach, you can check it out on my website if you'd like. The swing that I teach gives you a very consistent low point right off the left instep. You could even say the left heel. And so I'd like to see my club bottom out with every club in the bag, even the driver. I want to see it bottom out right here. So I will control my forward lean, how much divot I take, and my angle of attack simply with ball position. So for those of you out there who struggle with low point control, this is your basic cause of why you're not compressing the ball. So how are we going to jump this low point? You're probably getting your low point too far back, and that's the problem with a lot of golfers. How do we move it forward to the left instep without feeling like we need to kind of slam it into the ground or anything weird like that? Well, this becomes a sequence issue. So we always want the shift and turn of the body to go first. We've got to shift and turn very early from the top of the swing. Let's say I'm in good shape at the top of the swing. Typically, the person who doesn't get a lot of compression starts down with the club handle and the club shaft and the arm, something like this. This might be the problem of someone who's real strong or is trying to be real strong and pulls on it. It's also the problem of some better golfers whose bodies are just simply not active enough. I work with this all the time where they just don't, they think they're doing it okay, but we watch them on video and their bodies are simply very, very quiet. There just simply isn't a large enough, so I call this the engine of the train, and this would be the tow rope, the arm and the club, and the club head would just be the caboose. So what I'll tell them is, hey look, your caboose ran right into the back of the engine because why? Because the engine wasn't towing the caboose and keeping the rope tight. So instead of a couple between the cars like you'd normally see, let's say there's a 20-foot tow rope between the engine and the caboose. So of course if the engine's just coasting and the caboose can catch right up and just slam right into the back of it, and that's when you get your low point in the wrong spot and you get no compression. So let's look again from the start of the swing. I'm after shift to the left foot, respond by turning the torso this way before the arm or the wrist ever gets started. Then from here, I can show you, let's go back to 3/4, shift and turn all the way through. It's a long way to go for most of you doing it for the first time, but now look how easy it is to hit the ground in front of the ball. We'll look at it in slow-mo and you'll be able to see that in fact I am leading with my engine or my hips shifting, turning, doing my compound pivot, and you're going to see a little forward lean and my low point will be slightly in front of the ball. Let's take a look, see if I can do it. And that was a really well struck shot, pretty straight, but I really felt the compression because I had the handle just a little bit leaning forward at the moment of the strike. So this is not necessarily trying to hold it with my hands, but instead driving the left arm past the ball with the turn of the torso driven by the feet and the knees. Then I just simply have to put back the 90 degrees at the wrist that I borrowed in the backswing. So I've got the stats from the shot I just hit. This is a 5-iron. You'll see the number I've got circled here. I've got circled the angle of attack, which was 2.6 degrees downwards. So what that tells me is I've also got the low point here. The low point, you'll notice, is about 2.5 inches in front of the ball. So this is a pretty typical swing for me. The club was attacking 2.6 down, struck the ball clean, clear of the grass, with the handle probably leaning forward about 2 to 2.5 inches in front of the leading edge. The ball took off and then the club entered the grass an inch or two later and bottomed out about 2 inches in front of the ball, 2.5 inches in front of the ball. So this is really properly done. I hope that slow-mo made some sense to you, and what I'm doing with my hips and my shoulders leading all of my pelvis, I would kind of call or consider the engine, and I'm trying to drive that engine through the ball prior to the strike of the ball. Now this is where I come to kind of an interesting feel that I feel in the swing that I teach, the Mike Austin swing method. You might have heard of him before. He's the owner of the Guinness record for the longest drive ever hit around a tournament golf when he was about 60 years old. Hit the ball 515 yards. But we always say that we're feeling like we're hitting up on the ball. Now I just showed you data that proves that I'm not really doing that. I hit about 2.5 down. That's pretty typical for my 5-iron. But since I am shifting and turning and getting my pelvis out ahead of my chin, and I'm getting my left hip outside my left heel by about 5 or 6 inches, it's putting me at this tilt, like I'm going into a rock skip throw, or maybe turning a double play in baseball like this. So there's a big side tilt or a secondary tilt. I actually feel like I'm going to throw the club up. So I don't ever have, I compress the crap out of that ball too, but this goes against everything that all the other instructors on YouTube might be telling you, is they want you to swing down like this into the ground and pound it down into the ground. It's a feeling of hitting down. I don't think that's a good feeling to have. I don't think that's going to get you a lot of mileage. I think what you should be feeling instead is coming under with the right shoulder this way and feel club high up into the air. If you were going to let it go, you'd really throw a big high helicopter down the fairway like that. The difference is you're still going to have forward lean and a down strike because of your sequence. Again, if I am doing it with the left arm, I don't want to do this. This would be the caboose crashing into the engine, and look where I'm hitting the grass, way back behind it if I do arm only. So, you know, I would come into the ball with a backwards leaning club, hit it like a 7 or an 8 iron instead of a 5, and therefore I wouldn't compress it as much. It wouldn't feel like a 5 iron was supposed to feel. It wouldn't fly like a 5 iron is supposed to fly. It'd feel like a kind of a high powder puff. But watch as I take the left arm into the wind up, and I do my pivot until I advance the left arm beyond the ball. You see, I would end up here at impact with the club shaft leaning forward. I caught all ball first. The ball was caught clean, and for a 10-yard shot, that had the most possible compression that anybody could hit on a golf ball. Now, the higher up in clubs you go, and here's a pitching wedge. Now, a pitching wedge is going to compress the ball less because, again, it has less spin loft. It's also shorter, so odds are I'm going to be swinging it several miles an hour slower. So again, you have more loft, less speed, less compression. But the object is the same. I still feel like I'm going to come under and hit up on it. The only reason I'm not coming up on it is because the same rule, I'm advancing through the turn of my torso, which is what most people are missing. They're missing the shift of weight, the turn of the torso through the ball, and notice I have driven my left arm past the ball to where I must now hit with a forward leaning shaft, a down angle, and a forward divot, just like that. So you could again hear the click of the ball first. It was hit clean and the ball was driven on a nice trajectory. So even on a pitching wedge, I still feel like I'm coming under and throwing the club upwards. But we know in truth, because we've seen my angle of attack numbers, that I'm still catching the ball just before the low point. Therefore, hitting it square and clean and compressing it as much as it can be compressed. Now, is there such thing as too much compression? Well, yes and no, kind of. You could play a style like this where you hit everything, let's say with a 10-inch forward lean. I hit my pitching wedge just now like maybe a 5 or a 6 iron launch angle, super duper low. So basically, I'm presenting less loft to the ball at the moment of the strike, if we just talk about it simply. Therefore, I struck it like a 5 or a 6. Yeah, it's going to feel like I compressed it more, and the ball's going to go low and far, but that's not always good. You see, I don't want to over compress this thing. I don't want to de-loft this club unless I'm trying to play a trick shot under a tree or maybe into the wind. Don't need to, lean it forward that much, because you're going to run into, eventually, you're going to get to long enough clubs where that style, you're just not going to be able to get any height on it. So this 5-iron that I just hit, it would just go like a 2-iron or less than that even. It would barely get off the ground more than 30 or 40 feet, and I wouldn't be able to hold it on the green. So trying for even extra compression, just try for the correct compression. That's speed, correct amount of forward lean, clean contact in the sweet spot, and that's really all you need to worry about. Any more than that, and trying to do more, get more compression all the time, because that's better. Not necessarily, it just means you're going to be de-lofting everything and driving it really low, and that might work for some windy days, but I don't want to have to run everything up onto the green, at least in the United States. Maybe England, I might have to adapt that style if I'm playing in England or Ireland where it's really windy, but I don't need to trap it, because I really want height, I want descent angle, and I want the ball to spin, and I want it to stick when it hits the green. So let's take one more look at that exercise I'm doing, this time from down the line, that's going to ensure that I am forward leaning the club shaft at impact correctly. On a 5-iron, I like 2 to 2.5 inches. Let's say I'm in good position here. Shift to the front post, turn the chest. That advances the arms around the circle, puts me in a rock skip position, to where now I just start uncocking the wrists, and it gives me this forward leaning club. The whole time, however, I still feel like I'm going to hit up on the ball or throw the club high up in the air down the fairway. Again, with the left hand, shift all the way outside the ankle to the left post. It's a lateral shift, an aggressive lateral shift. Turn the chest. This drives the arm past the ball, and that enables me to catch the ball clean with the right amount of loft, or de-lofting the club the correct amount, and a nice forward divot. So I'm controlling my low point with those motions, triggering the downswing with this pivoting, turning action. Controlling the low point is where it's at. That's what we're trying to do, is control the low point, not with trying to hold on to the wrists or pull the handle. That is a no-no. You can de-loft the club and get some compression that way, but I'll tell you, you're going to run into a lot of other issues doing it that way. So you're still getting a free release from back here, just preceded as the engine, throw some logs into that engine, get the engine's wheels turning, and pull the caboose around the corner and upwards to the left. Hey, thanks so much for watching. I'm Steve, and thanks also to Golf Development Complex in Moore Park, California, one of the greatest, most beautiful places to practice anywhere in Ventura County, Southern California. Come out and join us sometime. Just ask for Paul and Diane. They'll take good care of you. So hopefully you got a little bit of enlightening about what ball compression is and how you're going to get the most or the right amount of it. And hey, as usual, if I don't see you in the next video, I hope we cross paths someday, and I'll see you longer and straighter down the fairway.